Behind every successful endeavor in life is a relationship built on trust. Welcome to The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. A podcast focused on helping you nurture healthy relationships. Join thought leader and world-renowned expert on relationship and empowerment coaching, Dr. Patty Ann, and her special guests every week for insightful and meaningful conversations filled with great takeaways that will help you build healthier business partnerships and happier romantic relationships. Are you ready to restore trust and enrich the significant relationships in your life? The Trust Doctor, Dr. Patty Ann, is in.
Welcome to today's podcast episode of The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. And I have an absolutely amazing, with a capital A, guest for today from across the pond, as we say in the States. But before we go any further, since I know you're going to love this interview, make sure you like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe to this podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about our British friend. This guy started a male, I believe it is a male personal care product, or right, and for men, right? Because we think of skincare as for women. And if you can see behind him, if you're lucky enough to have the video on, I think you can see all those products. No, we don't want them to see you. We want them to see your products.
I'll grab one here. This is the new brand. This is Waken. So that's what I'm holding up to the screen. That.
And so the skincare product is called, he's a founder of Bulldog Skincare, and he sold that, and it's expanded now into 31 countries. Now, you can't think that an entrepreneur like Simon Duffy will just lay back, chill, and enjoy the ride. No, he went on, and he is now a disruptor in, you'd never guess this, in the wash mouth industry, in the wash mouth product for the dental industry. And I learned so much from him. He has a product called Waken mouthwash, and he'll tell you more about it during the interview, but it's carbon neutral. It's all this healthy stuff. And apparently all the stuff most of the doctors use in their mouthwash products that they use in their office has all sorts of goo in it. So Simon is out to change that trajectory. So buckle up, because Simon Duffy is about to take us for a ride. Welcome, Simon.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. That is so cool to be here. So it's so nice to be speaking to someone in America as well. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. And I just butchered your intro. I'm not quite sure why. But why don't you tell everybody, I don't like to read the bio because people can just look you up, and I'm sure they will when we're done. So why don't you just tell people a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you are. You can start from now and reverse engineer. You can start from when you were in your mother's womb, wherever you want to go.
Well, sure. I mean, the two, I guess, when I look back on things that I've done in my life, professionally, Bulldog, and thank you for the introduction on that, has been a really formative thing. We started that in 2006 and launched in 2007. That was with a mission to disrupt skincare and to sort of create products that related more to men, and to grow this category. And I stopped doing that in 2016 when it was bought by a really cool American company called Edgewell. It's the company that owns Schick Razor and Banana Boat and Hawaiian Tropic.
So Simon, let me interrupt you for 1 second. I love to interrupt my guests. Did when you sold it to Edgewell, an American company, were you very much involved in the sale from the perspective of, did you have criteria as to what type of company it was that bought it, or did you just go all out American capitalist and just go for the money?
Definitely the former, and actually selling a company that you've poured your heart and soul and years of work into. And it's, at that point, it wasn't just me, it was my business partner who's, been along the journey with me every step of the way. And, we had similar ownership, same ownership. So we're sort of totally equal in that perspective. And it was a whole team. So you're definitely looking for a good home. I mean, there's the right time for a brand that has started as nothing and two people to put it into a much bigger organization, because it really gives the brand a better chance to fulfill its mission, to get into more homes, to get into more retailers. And it was the right time for the brand to do it. But we were really purposeful about the right type of company that we needed someone from a brand that would be good stewards, that could add value to it. And we're also looking for a partner that would treat the team in a sort of respectful way. So we all kept in the same office. The whole team was kept intact. So it wasn't like, in some cases, they want the brand, but they don't want the people, and they're pushed to the side. Yeah. So people were really important. And from that perspective, we only spoke to a few companies actually when it came around to doing the deal to find a bigger home for it.
Great. Now, did you stay on as well, either as a consultant or a co-president, which is a little funky, quite frankly?
Yeah, I did. I had 2 brilliant years full time, and that was actually part of the personal excitement about it. You were in a small team trying to solve massive, complex problems, and there's a temptation when you're a small team to think, how are the big companies doing it? We've got a lot to learn, and that was certainly an exciting thing for me to see what it's like on the inside of these huge companies that hitherto you've been competing with from the outside with far less resource. So I was there to learn. And also it was just a great opportunity to travel. Bulldog went from 12 countries to, I think you said 31. I think actually now, if you ask the team, it's probably up to about 35 now, 36. And over that 2 years, that's when that explosive international growth happened. And that was my part individually of the sort of overall sort of attitude and responsibilities of the team. I was sort of going around the world introducing Bulldog to new retailers with the new owner, and meeting all the local team and trying to tell the story and build the narrative in all these new markets. So for me, it was a great opportunity to travel and meet some amazing people and see some cool places around the world. But then I think the entrepreneurial drive and sort of where I think I can add the most value and be most excited and contribute the most is actually right back at the beginning. I mean, that's what
you're the visionary. So hang on, before you move on, since this is called the Trust Doctor, right? And we're all about, as most people that are listening to me know, I always say all success is based upon the ability to create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships, especially in business. So you said earlier that you wanted to see the inner workings of a company trying to solve problems as perhaps differently than a smaller company. Now, I would suggest, well, they're still accessing the people, right? That's the capital, the human capital to do that. But what did you learn? What was different that surprised you? And perhaps what was the same that surprised you when you got that inside view?
I guess from a relationship perspective, there's a lot that are the same. It's about building effective relationships, collaborating, understanding the bigger vision. I would think executionally, big companies have to behave a bit differently because the team is so big. Once you're a public company and you're reporting results every quarter, that's a totally different discipline, and it takes up a lot of time. So that was like a big learning, going from a private company to a public company.
A lot of headaches that come along with that, right? Just ask Elon Musk.
Yeah, right. You're forecasting, you're reforecasting, you've got sort of fiduciary responsibilities to, right. Not that you don't have that in a small company. I mean, one of the cool different things was just the scale and the ability to move quickly. Bulldog set out to be a natural.
Excuse me. Most people think the larger you are, the slower you can move. So you're saying you feel that you can move faster because of the resources?
You could answer that question both ways, and that isn't to sit on the fence. So I would say generally big companies can be a lot slower to make difficult decisions. There's more people involved in sort of legacy operate, and that's not always the case, obviously. There's just more rungs on the ladder between leadership to execution. So there's more meetings, there's more. So that I think is where things slow down. And I think the public
said it nicely. There's more bureaucracy.
Inevitably, because they have to be. I think where you can go quicker, like if you think about it from a product perspective, at Bulldog, we launched into razors and blades. You know, we were primarily skincare at that point, natural and sustainable skincare for men, and it was a winning formula and proposition at that point, scaling really brilliantly. You know, so much more growth to come, but we sort of proved that we sort of understood how to do that. We always wanted to do razors and blades. Like the razors and blades industry it was an absolute catastrophe from the perspective of sustainability. Like you think of all those disposable plastic razors, single use, big bit of plastic, all into landfill, can't be recycled. Mm-hmm. You know, the more systems where you buy the blades separately to the handle. If you can imagine 5 years ago what that would have looked like, it would have been a plastic handle inside, held on a sort of plastic sleigh inside a sort of plastic wrap thing that you can't get into. You're sort of like trying to smash it with scissors to open it. It's you know, Bulldog came along, and we just sort of tried to remove 100% of plastic from that proposition. You know, we had to in truth have a tiny weeny bit around the blades where the sort of blades are held in the cartridge, but the handle was made from bamboo. It was like metal inside. It was fully recyclable. All of the packaging was more how you would buy an Apple product. It was all sort of paper, cardboard, recycled cardboard. So we totally changed the way that these products were firstly made and then positioned in store. And actually, if you go into the store now, at least in the UK, I don't know what it's like in America now, but everything is packaged in this way. And I think that's when you're a small brand, you can sort of from the outside, you can be a real thought leader. You can be a provocateur. You can say, we've got a hypothesis about where this market is moving to, what consumers want in the future. In our case, more sustainable products. Yeah, amongst other things. I think when you're in a big company, if you can get the big company to sort of buy into this vision, they can just go so much quicker in terms of execution. You know, Bulldog, yes, there's bureaucracy and it's a bit slower to make decisions. But during that 2 years, you know, we took 10 years to go from 1 to 12 countries. And then this big corporate sponsor comes along. We go from 12 countries to 35 countries in 2 years. So they can just roll out an idea. And then we also changed product. You know, we went into other product categories that as you know, the millions and millions and millions of pounds it takes to create razor blade factories. You know, we can't do that as an outsider. So working with, you know, one of the two leading players in the whole world at this stuff, meant we could just go so much quicker to this vision that we had for the future. So yeah, some things were faster, some things I guess were a bit slower, but I think that's only a function of scale rather than anything else.
And also when you said, let me just challenge you just a little bit. So, you know, it took you a while to get from 1 to 10 countries. And then, you know, when the big company came along, that accelerated much faster. How do you know that wasn't necessarily a product of you hit that, what's the term, a tipping point number, and then all of a sudden things just take so much less time to move?
Well, in truth, I don't, because I sort of only know the story as it played out by sort of reaching this point of going into big. I mean, but to sort of wrestle with that a bit, like we definitely would have grown really, really quickly within our own resources from the point at which we sold. Like when I look at, you know, the major drivers of growth, you know, over the first year, and that was all stuff that was sort of coordinated before we sold, not completely, but it was rolling out into the big American retailers such as CVS and Walgreens and Target and Maya and places like that. Like those initial deals to go into 8,000 CVS stores had all been done. So you know, beyond that point though, you know, Bulldog is now a leading brand in Japan, and I remember going to that famous crossing, and the Bulldog face, our sort of iconic Bulldog advert, was like in a huge billboard projected over Tokyo. And then we had all these press launches and influencer launches, and you know, I was on stage sort of presenting Bulldog to a room of 100 journalists and being translated into Japanese, and we could never have done that within our own means as quickly and as effectively as that. So it just unlocked so much international opportunity, perhaps outside of America. You know, we had in truth been in America for 6 years. You know, we were the point at which we sold, we were probably the leading brand in Whole Foods, you know, the famous natural and organic retailers. And certainly in some of their regions, you know, the idea for Bulldog actually emerged in New York. So, you know, definitely in the New York stores, we were number one.
I know you've been all around, and early before the show started, as everyone knows, I'm a native New Yorker. And so Simon was saying that he spent some time in New York and that he loved it. So where were you with your business at that point in New York?
Well, the point for the idea of Bulldog, there was no Bulldog at all. There was no business. We were, my Annabelle, who's now my wife, but she was my girlfriend. I lived in New Zealand for 5 years after university, met Annabelle in Auckland. We moved to New York together, had a tiny weeny shoebox flat, as
like everything, like all apartments in New York.
We were, but you're never in the apartment, right? You're always out having fun. And
exactly.
We lived
That's
on
the point.
West,
right.
Yeah, we were West 11th and 7th Avenue. It was like a cool spot. And my local, or the closest Whole Foods store was Union Square, which I loved anyway. So November, so November 2005 or December 2005, it's one of those.
Yeah, before the world went crazy, everything went crazy.
But also people in London have no idea how cold it gets in New York. Like you wake up in the morning and there's like 6 foot of snow, and then those snow plows have gone down. And if you happen to own a car, which we didn't, like the car is completely buried on it. So it's like, and then I think somehow the architecture or the way they've sort of designed the streets sort of funnel the wind down the streets. Like it's freezing. Anyway, so it's freezing.
Yeah, you were in where the brownstones are in the West Village, west side of the village. So you have the brown. Yeah, you're right. It's certain streets are like a wind tunnel. Yeah. So
I just remember it's like, anyway, we're sort of walking to Union Square, freezing cold. My face is all chapping. I'm off to get product for Annabelle. Like it's where you go to get natural skincare, Weleda or whatever it was. And so I got this product for Annabelle. I was about to walk back. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get some moisturizer. Like my skin is freezing outside, and there was just no male products. And I remember speaking to the whole body team leader, like, where is the men's section if I wanted to get a male moisturizer? And she said to me, oh, there isn't one. Like we don't have any male skincare products.
What store were you in at the time?
The Union Square Whole Foods.
The Whole Foods. Okay.
And it's like a big, it's a big, people who know that retailer, know that store. There's thousands of products for women and for babies, and you got to go back, more than 15 years now, and there was nothing for men, and it would be different now. Bulldog would be there, but there'd be lots of other cool brands too. And I remember her saying, well, in situations like this, we recommend that men try this Weleda product or this Jason or Kiss My Face, but they're really sort of brought to life in a really feminine way, I would say. At least that's what I always said back then. And I was like, that's interesting. If it's not in Whole Foods, in Union Square, in New York City, and, New York is
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. That's the short. Maybe it does. I sort of
probably not though.
New Yorkers in that way, like New York is the center of everything. And I thought, if it's not in Whole Foods, in Union Square, then it doesn't exist. And that is the gap in the market type moment. You're like, maybe. And
an entrepreneur is born.
You then spend a year trying to work out if there's a market in the gap. Like, why is there not this product or this category of products doesn't exist, but why not? And then you sort of try to unlock, is it because men aren't interested in skincare? Is it there's no market for this? Can these products be formulated, in a natural way? So on and so forth. And you sort of start to break down this category opportunity into individual challenges that you need to address, solve, jigsaw it back together to sort of get your products onto the shelf for the first time. At least that's how we approached it.
Now, what were you doing? What were you doing for work before you came up with Bulldog?
I'd done a few things. I studied history at university, so it wasn't a business orientated thing. I had some training as an accountant. There was a sort of scheme I was on before university that I did during the university holidays, help pay the bills.
My condolences.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I took a lot from it, but ultimately it wasn't for me. Like I figured that out quite quickly. Moved to New Zealand. I thought for about a year, but ended up sticking around for almost 5 years.
Well, what brought you there? What brought you to New Zealand?
I think it was probably the push I sort of felt like I wanted a different experience to being in London, which is where I'm born and raised. And my university, Oxford, was about, an hour away. So I sort of always lived in the same place.
Oh, you went to Oxford. I didn't know that.
I spent a bit of time in Dartmouth in America. So I'd sort of been up to New Hampshire, but at Oxford for the main bit.
You were used to the cold when you came to New York.
I went to Dartmouth for the sophomore summer. So I sort of left the final term of the UK academic year, and then you have a big summer holiday and you go back in September. And I jumped straight on a plane, flew to Boston, got a bus up to New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, yeah.
And did the Dartmouth term and then came back and started the final term at my university. But I'd sort of always lived in the UK and I just wanted to go and do some more things. And I think I sort of, the idea that accountancy wasn't for me precipitated a bit of a impetus to do something. And I had a friend in New Zealand who I'd met at university who was working in an advertising agency. And I sort of was saying, hey, do you think if I come over, there might be a role for me? And he was like, let's see. And I sort of had a conversation with his boss and it sort of went from there. You know, I went over.
Sataki, right?
Yeah. And I sort of ended up staying there for a long time. And one of the lucky quirks of fate for me is that, you know, New Zealand is often a place where an international company will have an office, but because of the size of that country, you know, it's 4.5 million people, it financially will be a very small part of the overall. You know, Saatchi's biggest office was New York, and then it was LA, you know, just based sort of servicing the huge American. Anyway, but the global CEO lived in Auckland and lived in New York, so I sort of managed to start to work for him and his team, doing different things. We were doing organizational change, and then latterly we were doing innovation. So when I was in New York, I'd moved within Saatchi to Saatchi New York, and I was working on innovation challenges for big brands, global brands. So Coca-Cola, Fanta, Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Samsung, Starbucks, and we would huge brands. Yeah, and it was fun because we would go upstream into these organizations and see the sort of products that they're trying to develop that are sort of 5 years from market. And then if you imagine that advertising is about brands that are in market who have a communication challenge, you know, they need to introduce a new product or attract people back to a product that's losing relevance. And the output of that is typically an advert. What we were doing is taking the same sort of creative problem solving approach and applying it to innovation. So how can we partner with these big companies to better unlock a category opportunity, better articulate the way that consumers will think about it in the future? And I was doing that for these big brands. Or, you know, I was within the team I was with, you know, I was a member of this team that was trying to work with the innovation departments of these big companies. And it was awesome because I learned so much about business and innovation and brand, but at the same time, it was awesome because I felt, you know what, back to what you're saying, bureaucracy, things getting slowed down, great ideas getting diluted through committees rather than staying pure to what they were. I sort of took both a very positive experience about how do they do it, but also I took the impetus to think we can do this ourselves. You know, we can ferment change in a category from the outside and articulate a vision for the future just as effectively as these big companies. Perhaps that's naive, but that's what we thought. And I had an important relationship and, you know, person for me on so many levels is Rodri, who's was business partners on Bulldog and is business partners on Waken, which is our new venture. Rodri, it's a Welsh name.
Okay.
A lot of Americans would pronounce his name as Audrey.
Okay.
Which is a lady's name over here in the UK, but it's actually Rodri. He's Welsh, and he had a different skill set. Although in truth, he can sort of turn his hand to everything really easily. But he came from a financial background, and we sort of worked together. You know, his training and my training, and his experience and my experience have had a really good friendship at the time, and we sort of found it quite easy to collaborate. And we sort of set off together on this journey to create Bulldog and see if we could launch it. And
were you working together at Saatchi and Saatchi?
Saatchi and Saatchi, no, because he was working
Saatchi, listen to me, Sataki.
Yeah, he was. It sounds delicious though, but no, he was working at a bank and with brands, but he was just doing more of this company's buying that company, or, you know, so on and so forth. So we had a different skill set that meant that we could combine quite well. Particularly in
let me slow you down. Let me slow you down because I do so much work, and I know I have listeners that so much work with business partners and helping them. You know, it's a lot like a marriage. It works until it doesn't, and then it falls apart. And there's a lot at stake. You know, the example I give all the time is if you think about Apple, when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were best friends, they created Apple. The rest is history.
Yeah.
When that relationship became toxic and went south, the stock tanked. At the time, Steve Jobs was like one of the first people that got thrown out of the company he founded, which now it's not that unusual, but at the time it was unusual. And that was all based upon the health and then the souring the business partnership, right?
Mhm.
So you just said something that I think is really important to talk a little bit more about, whereas you acknowledge that your partner, although he's great at a lot of things and probably could do what you did, what the entrepreneurial world talks about from Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach, is, but his unique ability where he will really thrive, that he can do better than you or probably anyone else in the business, was the finance.
And well, a lot more than that, honestly. Sort of finance, operationally, he would take on the challenges of creating the products, making sure stuff arrived on time. If you took an analogy to a restaurant, right? My role is probably the maitre d'. I'm greeting people, introducing them to the menu, trying to encourage them to buy some stuff.
You're the people person.
And it's not to say he's not a people person, but what I know that I am not is the chef, making sure that the team of 40 chefs are consistently turning out top quality food to budget, on time. No one's getting cross, no one's getting ill. Everything works perfectly. Behind the scenes, we've got exactly enough ingredients turning up from the best possible producers, so on and so forth. Everyone's getting paid on time. So it's it takes a huge attention to detail and an ability also to see the big picture. It's a really difficult role. And I think entrepreneurially, you start off and you think you can turn your hand to anything. And I think in a different situation, I could have turned my hand to that. But I think the other thing is when you start a business, you've got to sort of divide to conquer to a wee bit. So there were certain things that I knew that I could contribute and add value to, which is introducing the products to the retailers, to the buyers, to the press, building this story. And I felt like I could do that quite well. So that's what I focused on. And that's not to say that Roger couldn't have done that, but it's more that I could do that well. Whereas I think he could just do that bit really, really well. So it sort of worked. But I think in a sort of a great business relationship, you can sort of learn to think with one brain. Maybe that's a dangerous sort of saying, but I could almost anticipate. I came through time to sort of anticipate how Rodri might feel about something. And there was also total trust, you leave your ego at the door a bit. So there's certain areas where I'm quite happy to take a back seat and just sort of not feel I have to have the final say on everything. And I think that's quite important too, because you've all bought into the big picture. We're still getting on and we're still sort of striving for the same goals. So the day-to-day tasks, you do just have to split them out and divide them, and at some point just not get in each other's way, just allow them to sort of crack on and get stuff done.
Okay, so I'm gonna just poke the bear just a little bit, and I'm struck by how respectful you are of your partner's skill set and all, and constantly saying he could have done that too, but not as well as you, is the part that you're not saying. So there must, though, just like in a marriage, you can love each other like crazy, and you realize that you're the yin to her yang or whatever. In a business partnership, what was a challenge that you had to overcome? Because I feel like there's so much that the listeners can learn from you. There must have been times where, even if you would take a back seat, even if you would be humble, you're working together for how many years? Wow.
I mean, we started kicking the ball around on what would be our business and Bulldog and all that sort of stuff in 2005. And what is it now? 2022. 22. So 17 years, right?
So long enough where it would be literally impossible to not have had differences. So how did you overcome them with your business partner?
I think I've learned to get a lot better at this, and we definitely had arguments like you do with, like I do with Annabelle, I do with my wife, right. And it sort of doesn't change sort of fundamentally how I feel about that person. And I think at the beginning, like the first phase, firstly, I sort of came to acknowledge that at this point, it's all up in the air. Like, we don't know if it's going to be successful or not. So things are going to feel a little bit more fraught. And also, you don't have as much resource. So everyone's trying to do too much. As you get a bit bigger, you can have structure and process and delegate a bit more. So I think firstly, it helps to understand that it would be totally crazy if we didn't sometimes sort of vent or, frustrations boil over. I think what I learned to do better is to sort of focus on listening and, if you seek to understand before you seek to be understood.
Stephen Covey's The Fifth Habits of Highly Effective People.
That's it. And I think listening becomes your superpower. And I think, back to what, the more discrete contribution that I had towards Bulldog, which was the retailers. It's not the gift of the gab, is it? People talk, that's like slang in the UK, but it's a really, really dangerous proposition, is that you can just go in and talk and sort of get your own way. I think the way that I approached it was, every relationship that you're trying to foster with a buyer at a retailer or a journalist, you listen first, and you really, and that's not being passive, you're sort of really determinedly focused listening to try and sort of understand what's important to them. And it's only
I call that active listening, where you're actively present.
Yeah. I think a different sporting metaphor, someone, using US sports, is organizations practice pitching a lot, but they don't practice catching a lot. And I think when you're working in sales, you need to practice catching. So you sort of, at the beginning of the meeting, you really want to suck a lot of stimulus and information in, like what's important to the retailer. And I think I got quite good at that in terms of,
as long as you're positioning the glove correctly.
Yeah,
and then you can help the pitcher throw the strike. You're right.
Yeah, and then when you come to your opportunity then to tell your story, you're able to do it with nuance and sort of understand the drivers for them. And sort of back to that conversation about sort of building a sort of tight co-founder bond between two people that are ultimately setting out and have the same goals. It's about, you diffuse tension by sort of first trying to really understand the reasons why you've sort of, frustration has boiled over. And in part, it just comes down to different people have different responsibilities. If there's one person who is day to day on the finance worrying about cash flow, which is super, super, super important when it comes to ensuring that a small business can survive, at certain points, that's going to become a sort of really powerful thought that you take into conversations about, should we be more aggressive in terms of how much we're spending on marketing? Because you have to play the role of sort of the financial person in the room that says, hang on, we need to plan ahead for purchases of this and payroll here. So that also sort of realization helped me to sort of understand that we've all sort of brought in different experiences and different priorities to this meeting. And what also really, really, really helped me was the sort of ongoing knowledge that we were both putting in 100% effort, and we both had it sort of exactly the same goal. And it's okay to...
You always stayed aligned. The
Totally.
Alignment was never at risk.
The alignment on what we were trying to achieve, and also on the most important aspects of the brand. Like, we wanted to do, like with Waken, we want to disrupt dental, present a different point of view to Colgate and a different point of view to Listerine. And we're going to do that by delivering really effective products that are formulated with fluoride and go through all the same tests and deliver 12-hour protection or 8 shades whiter teeth, all of the functional part that these products have to do. We're determined to do that. But where we can really be distinctive is we're going to do it sustainably, because dental is an appalling category when it comes to toothpaste tubes that go to landfill or black plastic caps that can't be recycled. We're going to use natural ingredients. So all of the other products use artificial mint. Like, that mint flavor is totally artificial. We're going to use real mint, and we're going to make these beautiful. Like, these items shouldn't be stuff that you want to hide away at the bottom of the bathroom cabinet. They should be out on display like a candle or a hand soap. So, whatever we might tussle on day to day, like, fundamentally the sort of values that are driving a company are the same, and we're 100% aligned on that. So sort of you sort of have to sometimes, I think, when you're sort of not quite seeing eye to eye, it's easy to focus on the 2% of things that you might disagree on and forget the 98% of things that you absolutely agree on. And if you can remember that, it's quite a helpful sort of takes the stress out of the room a bit. So the other thing I'd say is, there's a real moment for being quite tough and quite direct. Like, I remember a really important point with Bulldog where we went to see a big retailer, and there was a buyer, the person that makes the decisions on who gets what products into the stores, what shelf position they get. So it's a sort of fundamental success factor. And once a year they change the assortment, and Rodri and I drove up to the big merchandising center where they build the plans out over all the different formats. And we sort of walked in, and there was this huge shelf of Bulldog, massively exceeded our expectations. We're like, wow, thank you so much to the buyer. And he was like, you know what, this just can't happen. Your sales aren't good enough. I've told you to do this and you didn't do it. And the number one thing I don't like is your packaging. So I'm going to delist the brand entirely. And I don't know whether this was a sort of trick, but actually it precipitated this really difficult decision that we took, which was to go back to the well, find a different designer and reimagine the products and look at the branding and how we were telling the story of these products on the shelf. And it's a really hard thing to do because we had like 200,000 units of products in our warehouse currently at that point in the wrong packaging, something he didn't like. So it's a really tough bit of feedback to take. But actually, it was a really good bit of feedback to take, and we listened to it and then we acted on it, which is the trick you obviously have to do. And I think and it sort of galvanized the business. Like internationally, we started to get export business through off the new.
So hang on, Simon.
Packaging.
So how did you discriminate between this one particular buyer and this one particular retail outfit that his opinion, right for him, was in fact right for everybody else? How did you do that?
Through two factors, I guess. I mean, I think we did use a sort of professional research agency at that point to try to, but in a
after
small
you got
way,
the feedback
in a small way. Like I like fundamentally, I think these decisions
like a focus
sort of
group?
need to be, yeah. So and a few of those to sort of help articulate what we were trying to do, and sometimes external set of eyes helps you to sort of see the wood for the trees. And I think also, I think there was a feeling we had that, you know what, I think we knew that actually we weren't telling the story to consumers in the most effective, best possible way. And that's, I don't know whether that's instinct or, again, back to listening, sort of.
It's your gut. It's your gut.
If it's your gut, and it's also being open to stimulus around you and not sort of being dogmatic about it. But this buyer had a reputation of being really spiky, really aggressive, tough, you know, confrontational, like really got in our face about it, sort of threatened to delist the company. It was like a huge retailer in the UK, so it would have been quite problematic. But great feedback, and I think that's the risk, isn't it? Because I there's different retailer who are really, really polite, and you'd have meetings. They'd be like, I think that's great. Yeah. Have you got everything you need? Buyer? Yes. I think I've sort of got everything I need, and nothing ever happened. And I think probably look back to those meetings, and it's that person, for whatever reason, you know, perhaps because he knows, you know, we have everything riding in this company. It has to be successful. So they don't want to give bad feedback. Like, I don't like it. So they sort of just dodged the opportunity to actually have an impact by just not wanting to have an awkward conversation.
And that sinks a lot of relationships. It sinks marriages, It sinks business relationships, it sinks companies, because if you're not willing, look, I always say feedback is a gift.
Yeah.
And you know, and I will literally say, all right, let me have the feedback. And I go like this, because it's so hard to hear. It's so hard to hear. But those are the conversations that you have to have. You might have even been in the States, Simon, years and years ago. I hope I don't get myself into trouble, when Coca-Cola rolled out their new Coke product, and it was an absolute disaster.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think I was, but it's a sort of famous case study, isn't it? Like, they tried to solve to flavor. People didn't like it, but they sort of pursued it anyway because they wanted to scratch the itch that it would actually taste better than Pepsi. Well,
and clearly, either they did not listen to feedback they got because the executives wanted, weren't going to hear it, or they did get feedback and it was ignored because full steam ahead anyway. So that's where, you know, that's where the difficult conversation in a relationship, those are the ones that you have to have. And it's true with partners, it's true with your business. And that was such a gift that abrasive buyer gave you, because the nice person, you don't learn anything from. It's just, okay, great. Like that, and I'll say, no, if I told you couldn't get off this call without giving me some negative feedback, then many times they'll say, well, If
Yeah.
you want to know, and
Yeah.
then they tell you, and I'm like, okay, let me, and then I always just need to process it, right? Because it's hard to hear.
Yeah, and it's hard to do it in an organization. And I look at it both ways. And I've been guilty of it myself. There's an opportunity to sort of have a difficult conversation that actually might lead to someone learning a skill or doing something in a way that ultimately could be better, and you sort of dodge it because you don't want to hurt their feeling. And I've been guilty of that. And you sort of that's a focus area, or often if you're speaking to people from your team, you can sense not everything's right, and at the end you might say, look, is there anything really petty, like not that important, but is there anything that's just really bugging you? Will you just tell me? And then it just sort of, it might all come out once it's been given permission. So it's hard to give feedback. It's hard to receive it, but at both ends, it's a skill that you practice, and it's a gift, but as a person, you've got to be open to receiving it in that way, because some people are like, just back off,
and so two things. Well, a couple of things, what you said, speaking with people, if I'm in there coaching or consulting, things aren't going right, the business guy came in and said their business model is great. So it's not the business model, that only leaves me, right? The relationship expert, the trust doctor. And they'll tell me all this stuff. And then it seems as if we're done, and I'll say, and anything else. And to your point, just wait. Perhaps that's the most important thing comes up. It's the last thing that's said, perhaps because they're hesitating to share that with you. But I think you can, I firmly believe you can say almost anything to anyone. It depends upon how you deliver it, right?
Yeah.
Some people need that New York in your face, this style to get their attention. And other people can't hear that. And, many times I'll set something up like, all right, I got to tell you something. You are not going to want to, and, I make it like somebody died. And then whatever you say, is that all?
Yeah. No, receptive to that. It's different tactics for different people, but I guess you're trying to achieve the same thing, a degree of understanding and honesty and consistency, and that's sort of, whatever it is, become the bedrocks of an effective working relationship. Totally.
If people know you really, was it somebody, I think Roosevelt said, nobody will care about how much you know until they know how much you care. Right? And then when people won't, to your point earlier about, I won't even bother saying anything to that person because they're not going to listen. So they've set themselves up that way. But we took a little, I always like to derail a little bit, but tell us how you got from Bulldog now to Waken.
A few reasons. I think it's a really exciting opportunity, Waken. As I said, it's this enormous multi-billion pound category that has approached taking care for your teeth and your gums and all of the products we associate that with: toothpaste, toothbrushes, mouthwash. I think in a very old-fashioned way. Like, if you look at what's been happening around the world, like, the world is crying out for more sustainable products. This is or at least one of the key issues that we all face.
They're actually demanding it. I would say they're actually demanding it.
That's the frustration I have as somebody who uses these products before someone who creates these products and sort of has a company that tries to do it. So it's like, when I think about stuff that I want to do every day, brush my teeth is going to be in there. And then sort of before Waken, I feel like I know that this toothpaste tube is going to go to landfill. Like, it's just such a frustration. And it's the same with mouthwash. It's like, you don't really have to look too far around the internet to find loads of pictures like this, these bottles just washed up on the beach, or these caps that can't be recycled. And
what about floss? The floss stuff is all plastic too, right?
Yeah, typically it has to have a sort of degree of strength to sort of, as you pull it through your teeth. I mean, we've got a floss that's made from recycled milk bottles, I think it is. So you can sort of close the loop on this particular, product stream. And I think that's really important. In some cases, you just have to find a better type of plastic, post-consumer recycled plastic. Make sure you put these products together so it's a sort of single plastic type so it can be recycled. but yeah, but overall, you look at beauty and, where Bulldog was, like more broadly the category, there's loads of cool independent brands that have a point of view on sustainability, use natural ingredients. And then you look at dental, it just doesn't exist. And it's like the stuff that the dental industry gets away with just wouldn't work in beauty. So we're trying to bring some of that hustle.
Isn't that interesting? Because dental is so, people don't realize a dentist is a doctor. I mean, you can die, from these procedures.
Yeah, there's an Australian dentist called Dr. Stephen Lin, who wrote a book about the dental diet. And it takes a wellness and health perspective on caring for your mouth. And it really, it's the early warning system for the health of your whole body. And through taking care of sort of nutrition and your mouth, it can have a demonstrably positive effect on your overall health and wellness. So it's a really important part of what you do every day, I think. And I think it's a category that deserves a more purposeful, sustainable option that people will actually buy. But as I said, these products have to be effective. Like, you have to formulate them and create them in a way that means they're going to care for your teeth and,
what year did you start? What year did you start this company?
2019. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, with the pandemic and everything. Like we sort of hit the ground running from a cold start in 2019, January.
Same business partner as with Bulldog.
Exactly. Yeah. We finished September 2018, relaxed for a bit. And then sort of after
like a New York
after
minute.
the holidays.
Sounds like a New York minute. You relaxed.
Yeah. And then off to the races on the new one. We were selling in Sainsbury's and Boots from 2019 November. So maybe 10 or so months to sort of get it into market. So we had 4 months or so until, end March, early April 2020. And that's obviously a really disruptive, like the retailers that we had sparred to be listed with suddenly are focusing on other things, keeping people fed, sort of figuring out how to get products to people's homes when the stores are shut down and everyone is isolating. So rightly so, of course, but it just meant that it was quite a turbulent time to try and introduce this new, more sustainable
I coached
product.
2 dentists during that time, and I know they were still working, but they had to make all these accommodations.
Yeah, I think it was difficult on dentists, and I think lots of people put off treatments. And I guess working within the constraint, and every country will be different. And I don't know what it would have been like in America, but in the UK, I think it was pretty much down to emergency treatments only, rather than the opportunity. Well,
these were 2 different states. Yeah, they were 2 different states, both more conservative states where things carried on more than perhaps in other areas. So how did you take advantage of, look at it as an advantage, that time where clearly you had to pivot, right? Early on.
Back to that theme of listening for me, which is what's unusual, I guess, for a business that's just started. Normally, I think when you launch a brand, you're spinning all these plates and you're sort of moving from problem or opportunity to sort of the next one to the next one. And it's a lot about momentum and determination and let's get all this stuff done. And then I guess when all that sort of dries up because the world's changed, you have this really talented group of people that we sort of want to focus on something that's going to work towards the overall vision. And what we could do, so I guess the opportunity in that is to pause, revisit a lot of the decisions that we've made, and think about, in the context of what we're seeing now and the pandemic and how that's going to transform the way that people shop, where we work, or the sort of, as it sort of ruminates and creates changes or speed changes up that were already happening in technology or sort of working habits. Like, how are we going to sort of adapt our brand? Do we need to? And the initial assumptions that we had, what would we change now? And then I guess we'd also been in market for, there's nothing in the life of a brand that is better than that first 2 years in terms of opportunity to listen and learn and make changes, because there's only so much you can really tease out and figure out before you get started. Like, you have to move from hypothesis to action, and then in that first period when you actually
So
got a real product.
What did you learn?
I think a few things. I think we challenged ourselves on price. Like, I think we'd made it a bit too expensive.
You read my mind. I was going to ask you the price point between what you have that's natural and healthy as opposed to.
Yeah, I think we launched it and it was too expensive. So I think like the price was a barrier for lots of people. So we had to sort of change our model a bit and sort of think about things in a slightly different way. But fundamentally, we still determined to. So what we didn't have to change. Did
you lower your profit margin, or did you just?
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is take quality out of the product. So, but I guess you can think about what stayed exactly the same. The vision, how important we think things like sustainability and natural are going to be, how focused we are on making beautiful products and products that work. So that all stays the same. We don't want to change our channel strategy. We still want to be in the same retailers. Mm-hmm. We might have to adapt to how the balance of how they interact with shoppers changes. What changed for us was we learned about price and we're a bit too expensive. We learned about flavor. You look at the Waken website today and there's peach and there's elderflower and blackcurrant, and the hypothesis there was people want delicious experiences, and mint doesn't always have to be 100% mint. And I still believe that, but I think we'd gone too far.
We know that from the seltzers.
Yeah, we'd gone too far down this sort of playground of flavor. And I think like we sort of bring it a bit back, at least where we are at the moment, to real peppermint or real spearmint, or sort of it's minty, but it's also got a touch of lemon or a touch of strawberry. So I think we sort of toned that down a bit. And I think we also learned, we started off as a mouthwash, and mouthwash is in and of itself an enormous product category. But actually, I think
in what way? In what way?
Size, scale. It's in 50% of homes, and it's a product that we could create that both men and women, or and
it's in every hotel
room. Yeah, exactly. Would use. Whereas with Bulldog, at least to start off with, it's sort of focused on men, and it's focused on the 15% of adult men that actually are using skincare products. So it's quite, but dental is vast. And then, but I think we also thought we have to broaden the ambition to not just mouthwash, to toothpaste, and to every other product that you need in this assortment. We have to think bigger. So those were the challenges that we took away. And then there were some other things we had to do, work out how we were going to collaborate as working from home rather than being in an office. And I'm a firm believer of the sort of role of being with people in the same room to sort of achieve stuff and come up with great ideas. So personally for me, that was quite a challenge to, like it was for everyone, but try and sort of maintain that energy, but do it through a TV screen or a computer screen or whatever. And I don't actually have an answer to that. So if anybody knows,
do you have everybody working?
Please.
Do you have everybody working back in the office now?
We're split model. So
hybrid. Okay.
Yeah,
it's going to be hard to get anybody 35 and under to work for
you. The genie's out of the bottle, I think, on that line. We're not going back to 5 days in an office.
Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
No, but it's very, very relevant. But someone was telling me the story of Steve Jobs the other day, and when he bought Pixar, one of the things I think he did sort of sooner rather than later is he looked at what they were doing with their office, and they were splitting it out to 3 different areas, like animation here and finance here. He ripped it all up and he put them all into the same space. And then he forced through the design of the building to have what's the most important thing that we need is everyone interacting, and all the cross-function meetings sort of through the canteen and the meeting rooms, put them all in one place and sort of cleverly nudged them towards having all
cross-functionality. Yeah.
Yeah. So I sort of think that we can achieve more if we're together in the same place.
Yeah,
but I also want to be flexible and allow people to sort of work from home and be more efficient and focus on their tasks. So we're sort of split model at the moment.
I'll just challenge you. You don't even have to answer it. Let's say though, however, if there's an awesome person that you would love to have work for you that lives, say, let's make it up, in New York, and cannot or will not relocate, would you want to risk not having that talent, just to play devil's advocate?
Why are you thinking of sending me your CV?
No. I'm unemployable. I work for myself.
I'm teasing. No, I think talent and if it's the right person, you find a way. So ultimately I'd err on the side of flexibility, but it's also difficult when you're building a culture to have sort of one rule for one person and one rule for everybody else. So you would be cognizant of the fact that,
you can't do that actually.
You accommodate one person in a certain way, and that might send ripples around. So you sort of have to think, really carefully about that. Really carefully about that too. I remember reading about some of these amazing soccer players that we have from the UK go over and play in the MSL, and they're so wealthy when they turn up that the whole of the team flies coach back to the training, and then they get on their private jet and sort of I'll meet you back at training tomorrow. And I just don't think that works in a team environment where
and it
you've
doesn't work.
You've got a superstar that has special rules, so it doesn't work.
Well, it's also the corporate model, right? The CEO stays at the Four Seasons and flies on the private jet, on the corporate jet, and everybody else is staying. I don't want to say any brand less than the Four Seasons and get in trouble. I guess my only comment was, you have to, like anything else, I think we have to customize and know each person that works for us, know their why, right? Build that relationship. And, I'm working with 2 firms now, very old school, and they're dying because they can't get people to stay or they want to work remote. They're accountants. How much creativity is going? But having said that, I think, we have to take the new paradigm and not try to solve the culture issue with the old paradigm, right? And to me, and I'm not saying that you're not right, but if people, the way to bring people together every quarter anyway, but certainly if you're remote, you have to bring people together. And I don't care if you make pizza, I don't care if you have someone like me come in and talk about emotional intelligence or whatever, but if every quarter you get people together and it's done right, that goes a long way in building those relationships. I mean, I was just out at a conference for 2 days, and within 2 days, I feel like I know these people so much better than before.
Take it out of a business, think about your family, and, some dads, some mums, they'll travel a lot with work, or they'll just have to be away. And it doesn't mean that they love their kids any less, but, if you're building a strong family, like part of the requirement, or, it's an easier environment to do that in, is if you're at home every day with your kids rather than seeing them at the weekends or something. So, it's hard to work remotely on being a parent.
I think the word we're both looking for is intentional. You have to make a conscious effort to be intentional. It's interesting though, right? I actually find it exciting. Like as we're talking right now, I'm not sure when we'll have this aired, but right now Elon Musk is in the process of buying Twitter, maybe. What I find fascinating is the conversation. I'm not commenting one way or the other. I won't touch politics with a 10-foot pole, but I find it fascinating, the dialogue that's going on around it. I'm like, wow, look, it just evokes such strong emotions. It's amazing to me.
I mean, I don't know how to think about that really. Like, he's obviously on one level someone I just absolutely admire hugely, but I think it will just be really interesting to see how Twitter is something that has the potential to do enormous good but also enormous bad, and sort of quite how it will be regulated and guided under his stewardship.
But isn't that true for the internet? If you talk to parents, the kids that are being bullied, and all electronically. But I guess I brought that up to bring it full circle. The conversation we had about hybrid work, remote work, I find it fascinating because people, for the most part, feel very strongly about how they feel about it. And I just think just having the conversation is awesome because it means we're evolving, we're changing, or we'd all be driving to work, in our dinosaur and creating the wheel. I don't know.
I mean, and where do you think we'll be in 10 years? I mean, that will be the question.
Mars, right?
Well, I don't know. Like perhaps the office will be completely gone, or perhaps there'll be challenges on the working week. Perhaps
the 4-day work week. The 4-day work week. That's coming. That's coming.
Perhaps young people will be saying, "Hey, I'm contracted to do 35 hours a week, and I'm going to do that in 3 days, and I'm going to take 4 days off. And like you know, as long as I get my hours done, or, I don't know, but I imagine with this discussion and reassessment of how we work or what's important, whatever like the real driver is, I think we're only just getting started. Like I'm with you, I think it's going to be an exciting period, and I don't think whatever we've optimized towards now, I would say we're not going back to 5 days a week in the office, but I definitely would think that 10 years from now it's going to be different to where we are today.
I 1,000%. I think also your comment about the 35-hour work week, in office full time, people want it. It wipes out a whole middle layer of management. Like, we're all adults, right? Do you need, if you get the results that you need to get, it might take me 2 hours. It might take somebody else 5 hours. Who cares? Right.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I feel compelled as a mom of four children that are grown at this point, but I can tell you, since women went into the workforce full force, right? After World War II, we had a little bit of a lull, right? Guys came home, but for the most part, at least the last 20 years, we have working moms have been begging to be able to work remotely, begging, because it just makes life so much easier to be able to put your kid on the school bus or drive them to school, or even, quite honestly, oh my God, I need the plumber to come. And now I have to take a day off from work. So the doorbell rings, you let the plumber in, and I don't think women are not working anytime soon again.
Totally agree. And I think that's totally right. And I totally support that. It's another challenge as well sometimes, isn't it? That different people have different roles within an organization. And back to retailers, the people that work in the supermarkets, sort of putting the products on the shelves, they can't work from home, and the cashiers can't work from home.
Your dentist can't work from home.
So it's always a sort of first principles flexibility really works, but I guess in some cases you don't want to create a sort of culture where the head office team are just totally working from home and enjoying the benefits of all that flexibility, and they're trying to marshal the resources of people that are in stores that have to work in the store because that's their place of work. So it's you want to sort of find a perfect solution for each individual, but there is a role perhaps of sort of trying to work out what's going to be fair and how that's going to impact all of the stakeholders within the organization. And that's why management is such a complicated thing, honestly. And that's part of the reason why maybe I am drawn to the very early stage of these product developments, because you can you're thinking with all the complexity that goes on of how do I solve this challenge from a product perspective. And yes, you build people and processes around that. But when you're the CEO of a big public company, you're like, a lot of it is how do I solve these complex people resource challenges? And I'm just sort of erring on the side of 2 or 3 people in a room trying to solve a product challenge. And I'm sort of drawn to that, the intellectual challenge and opportunity that's associated towards that.
Of course. And I think in the future, just to make it a little bit more, macro as opposed to micro, people, the ability to work remotely will inform people's career choices. Or, even if, do you want to be a mechanic and you have to be in the office? Or if you're a physician or a dentist and you have to be working it's just interesting. But again, as a society, we're evolving. It's, I'm not that old, Simon, but I was the first girl on my block to wear sneakers. That sounds ancient. Like, wait, women didn't wear. I remember my mother going from dresses to pants. Again, I'm not that old. So, now we went from turn of the century, went from a 6-day work week to a 5-day work week. Now we're talking about 5 years ago, I had a CEO I coached talk about the 4-day work week. I'm like, we'll see, so it's all just evolving. And I think it's exciting. So anything that you'd like to share before I let people know, and thank you Thank you so much for your generous time. I could talk to you all day. I adored this conversation. Anything else that you'd like people to know before you share with them how they can find out about you, your products, all that good stuff?
Well, the one thing that I guess I reflect on from time to time is, when we were building Bulldog for the first time, there were people who made time for us when we were rookies, and there were people that weren't. And I remember really positively the people who were generous with their own time and network and wisdom, and that was important for us. So I think, since we had sort of some success with Bulldog, but certainly before the exit, like all the way along, if anybody wants to talk with us or speak with us, we'd always make ourselves available. And often, I mean, the thought I would like leave people with is lots and lots and lots of people have brilliant ideas, like ideas that when you sit down and talk with them about their ambitions to become an entrepreneur, to start a business, to start a brand, to solve a problem, they're great ideas. And then the great majority of those people fall away on actual execution, like giving it a go,
take action,
take action. And that's the thought. It doesn't have to be perfect when you start. You just have to get going. And that's something that, you try and make it as good as possible. But if you're not changing things in that first couple of years, you're not listening properly, and you're not doing your job properly as an entrepreneur. So just get going. And don't sort of allow yourself to get to a point in your life where you look back and you feel like, oh, I really deeply regret those choices where I didn't do the brave thing or the unknown thing. Just give it a go. And I think
Great.
that would be the sort of final thought in terms of if there is some sort of advice that people want to take away from this.
Great. You answered the question I didn't ask yet, but I'll ask you my last question. What's the last book you reread and why?
It isn't a business coachy book, to be honest.
That's okay.
It's the Dune book by Frank Herbert, and I read it in anticipation of the film coming out. But actually, when I think about that book, it's the film, the sci-fi book, and it's just so prescient.
Oh, you're into sci-fi?
Not all the time, but it just blew my mind when I was sort of in my teens, and I read it again, and it just blew my mind again. It's sort of complex and detailed. It's a fantastic story, but I think he wrote that back in the 60s or the 70s, and I might be getting that horribly wrong, but the themes about ecology and sort of a battle over resources and how precious water is just so relevant today, and sort of this sort of theme of a sort of religious war and how it can just sort of totally spiral out of control, and all of the bad stuff associated with that is totally relevant today. And it's just sort of an incredible story just wrapped up in really important narratives that we see when we sort of open our eyes and look out what's sort of fermenting discord in the world today. So it's an incredible story, but it's also a really thought-provoking book and narrative that he sets out.
Great. Thank you. So how would you like people to find your product? Any specific place you want to direct them to?
Yeah, www.wakencare.com, which is where you can WAKENCARE.com.
Okay.
And if you email in on the hello@wakencare.com email, it's either myself or Rodri who reads that. Great source of feedback. So yeah, you can reach me there. The other brand we talked about was Bulldog Skincare, which is bulldogskincare.com. So check it out. And if we have Bulldog in America, but we don't yet have Waken in America, but it's something we'd love to do soon. So 2 years from now, watch out for it in your local store. I was going
to say, let me know if maybe I can help you with some kind of contacts. We'll talk a little bit later. So
that'd be lovely.
All right. So that concludes today's podcast episode of The Trust Doctor, Restoring Trust and Enriching Significant Relations with Simon Duffy, who did indeed take us for a ride. So thank you so much, Simon, for your generous time and your words of wisdom. And I'll see you all next time.
Thank you for having me. That's been good.
Once again, we've concluded another great episode of The Trust Doctor with Dr. Patty Ann. Tune in next week for more insights and advice on how you can create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. To find out more about the podcast, visit drpattyann.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Until next time.